Leonard Okafor had the kind of life people only read about in glossy magazines. At 33, he was already a walking empire. Hotels in Dubai, estates in Abuja, private jets that barely touched the ground, and cars that could blind you in the sun. If wealth had a face, it was his. But here's the funny part. Inside all that golden life, Leonard felt like a prisoner. Every night, he lay on a king-size bed so big you could get lost in it, yet sleep never came. He scrolled through his phone, hundreds of "Congratulations, boss," "Big man, you inspire me," "Sir, please bless me with 2K," but not one single soul ever texted, "How are you, Leonard?" Imagine that. A billionaire surrounded by people, but lonelier than a stray dog in the rain. And then there was Vanessa, his fiancée. Instagram queen, professional slayer, and self-proclaimed future Mrs. Billionaire. They met at a charity gala, introduced by mutual friends. From day one, she was always picture perfect. Slim waist, perfect wig, always holding a wine glass like she was born in Paris. Everyone said Leonard was lucky. Ha! If only luck could buy peace of mind. Vanessa was beautiful, no doubt, but Leonard was starting to see the cracks. She loved attention the way a baby loves breast milk, non-stop. She lived for the likes, the comments, the hashtags. Spoiled wife loading. Billionaire fiancé. Every gift Leonard gave her ended up online with tags to the brand. "Thanks, baby, for my Dior bag. You're the best." But never once, "Baby, thank you for thinking of me." Whenever they spoke about the future, she never mentioned family or children or building a life together. It was always the wedding decor, the media coverage, the guest list. Sometimes Leonard wondered if she wanted a husband or just a sponsorship deal with his surname. Then came the night that changed everything. Leonard returned home earlier than usual. The house was quiet except for laughter spilling from the living room. He paused, curious. Vanessa was there with her two best friends, plastic smiles, fake accents, the full package. "Girl, you've hit the jackpot," one of them squealed. Vanessa leaned back, swirling her wine. "I told you already, I secured the bag." They laughed like witches at a midnight ritual. "Even if he goes broke, you'll still cash out," another added. Vanessa smirked, lips curling like a snake. "That's plan B." Leonard froze. His heart didn't explode immediately. No, it cracked slowly, painfully, like ice under weight. He stood there in the hallway, his chest tight, ears ringing. He wanted to storm in, flip the table, and demand answers. But he didn't. He just stood there like a ghost in his own house, listening to the woman he thought loved him reveal her truth. Later that night, when Vanessa crawled into bed, acting all sweet, "Baby, are you tired? Want a massage?" Leonard pretended nothing happened. Maybe they were joking, he told himself. Maybe girls just talk nonsense when wine enters their system. But deep down, he knew. And then 2 days later, his friend Felix came to visit. Good old Felix. They laughed, shared drinks, but as the night grew darker, Felix shared a story. "My cousin, N," Felix began, shaking his head. "The guy lost everything in one bad deal. Guess what? His fiancée dumped him in less than a month. Said she couldn't suffer in poverty. Next thing, she married another rich fool. Can you imagine?" Leonard's hand tightened around his glass. The words hit him like bullets. He smiled weakly at Felix, but inside his mind was spinning. That night, sleep completely abandoned him. He kept hearing Vanessa's laughter. "I secured the bag. That's plan B." His chest burned. He needed answers. He needed to know if Vanessa was real or just another pretty actress auditioning for the role of Mrs. Billionaire. And so, a cruel idea was born. If money was the bait, he would cut the line. If wealth was the stage, he would burn it down. Leonard decided he would stage his own downfall. He would disappear from the billionaire spotlight and return as the one thing Vanessa would never expect, a crippled, homeless beggar. Because in the end, there was only one question that mattered. Would she still love him if he had nothing? Back in his study, Leonard sat down heavily, like a man carrying the weight of an entire country on his shoulders. He rubbed his face slowly, fingers digging into his temples. The decision he had been dancing around in his head was no longer a maybe. No, it had crystallized into cold, sharp reality. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't paranoia. It was proof. Proof that the woman he wanted to marry was playing two games at once, loving him in public, plotting her plan B in private. That night, Leonard drove to see the only person whose opinion still mattered, his mother. Mrs. Okafor, a woman who carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen storms and survived them. She was the one person Leonard couldn't fake anything around. They sat in her garden under the evening sky. Flowers swayed gently, the crickets sang, and Leonard spilled his heart out like a broken boy. He told her everything: Vanessa's slip-ups, the laughter with her friends, Felix's warning story, the doubt that had been eating him alive. "Mom," Leonard said, his voice barely above a whisper, "before I build a future with her, I need to know, is she here for me or for what I have?" Mrs. Okafor studied him for a long moment, her eyes steady and searching. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "My son, if your heart is restless, then test her. But remember, truth and love are fragile things. Once you expose them, you can never put them back the same way." Leonard nodded. Her words sank deep, but his resolve only grew harder. That night, when he returned home, he sat alone in his room staring at a framed engagement photo on the wall. The picture was perfect: white outfits, flawless smiles, the definition of couple goals. But Leonard knew better. A smile can be makeup for the soul, and Vanessa's smile was hiding something. He whispered to himself, "It's time." And so, the billionaire began to orchestrate his own downfall. The first strike was a carefully drafted press release. His communications team, sworn to secrecy under the threat of losing everything they owned, sent out a bombshell. Leonard Okafor's empire was collapsing. By morning, the business world was in chaos. News channels screamed headlines: "Billionaire loses everything overnight." Okafor Group facing bankruptcy. Investors pull out. Luxury king reduced to loans and scandals. For the first time, Leonard's name was no longer tied to power and wealth, but to shame and downfall. He made sure Vanessa saw it on the evening news before he told her himself. When she came home, Leonard was waiting in the living room. Behind him, the large flat-screen TV replayed his fall on every channel. His shoulders slouched, his face tired, his eyes carrying the weight of fake defeat. He looked every inch the broken man. "I made a mistake," he said quietly, his voice cracked just enough to sound convincing. "I trusted the wrong people. The company's value dropped by 80%. I had to take out loans just to stay afloat. The cars, the house, everything might go." Vanessa's wine glass trembled in her hand. She stared at him like a woman being told her designer bag line was discontinued. "You mean we could lose everything?" she whispered, eyes wide. Leonard nodded slowly, never breaking eye contact. There was a pause, a silence thick enough to choke on. Then, suddenly, Vanessa leaned forward and grabbed his hand. Her voice softened, almost angelic. "I don't care about any of that," she whispered. "I'll stand by you, Leonard. Money comes and goes. What matters is that you're still here." For a moment, Leonard almost believed her. Her touch was gentle, her eyes glossy, her tone perfect. He wanted to think he was wrong, that maybe he'd misjudged her. "Thank you," he said, nearly convincing himself. "You don't know how much that means." She smiled, kissed his forehead like the world's most loyal wife-to-be. But masks have expiry dates. Later that night, while Leonard stepped outside to take a call, Vanessa reached for her phone. She stared at the screen for a moment, biting her lip, then scrolled down to a number she hadn't touched in months. She pressed dial. "Tunde," she said softly when the call connected. Her voice was low, cautious. "Hey, it's me. Yeah, it's been a while. Can we meet?" The next day, she told Leonard she needed space. "I just need to clear my head. I'll stay at my cousin's for a few days." Leonard didn't argue. He smiled faintly, kissed her on the cheek, and told her to take all the time she needed. But behind the scenes, one of his drivers, someone Vanessa never noticed, was following her. By evening, Leonard had photos spread out across his desk like a detective in a crime show. There was Vanessa, in a fitted black dress, laughing across a cafe table with a tall, stylish man. None other than Tunde, her ex-flame, now a flashy influencer with more followers than sense. They didn't look like old friends catching up. They looked like unfinished business reigniting. Leonard stared at the photos, his face expressionless. No flinch, no tears, just quiet acceptance. The soft words, the forehead kiss, the promises to stand by him, all of it had been theater. Vanessa was just waiting for the final curtain. That night, Leonard removed the engagement photo from the wall. He placed it face down in a drawer and locked it. The test wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. For 3 days, silence. Vanessa didn't call, didn't text, didn't even pretend to worry. But on the third evening, the front door swung open and in she walked like a queen returning from holiday. Her makeup was flawless, her perfume choking the air, her red heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. The same red heels Leonard had bought her in Paris. She dropped her bag on the chair and smiled casually. "I'm back," she announced, as though nothing had happened. "I've decided to stay. I want to help you through this tough time." Leonard looked up from the armchair, his expression unreadable. He only nodded. "Thank you." No argument, no questions, just that. At dinner, the silence between them felt like glass about to shatter. Then Leonard spoke, his tone calm, almost hopeful. "I have a private meeting with a potential investor tomorrow. If it works, we might be able to save everything." Vanessa's eyes lit up instantly, the way a gambler's eyes light up when they hear Double or Nothing. "Really? That's good news, Leonard. Just do your best, okay?" He smiled faintly. "I will." But there was no meeting. The next morning, Leonard vanished to a secret facility where everything had already been arranged. Hours later, news broke like wildfire. Tragic accident. Billionaire Leonard Okafor paralyzed in car crash. The photos of the mangled car spread online. Emergency responders, actors in his elaborate play, sold the illusion perfectly. His personal doctor confirmed it. Leonard was paralyzed from the waist down. When Vanessa heard her performance could win an Oscar, she cried rivers. She prayed loudly. She even took a dramatic photo beside his empty hospital bed, posting it with the caption, "God, please heal him." With hashtags Faith Strong, Love Hurts. Thousands liked it. Comments poured in. "Aw, you're such a strong woman. God bless you, Queen." But behind closed doors, nothing. No real grief, no real questions, no genuine care. She visited Leonard once, 10 minutes. Not a word about when he would be discharged. She barely looked him in the eye. Then she left, clicking away in those same red Paris heels. Leonard lay there, watching, silent. The act was working, and the mask she wore was crumbling faster than he expected. A few days later, Vanessa returned to the now half-empty mansion. Her heels echoed against the marble floor as if mocking the silence that had replaced luxury. On the counter sat a single sheet of paper, a handwritten note in Leonard's neat, careful handwriting. "I need time to heal, financially and emotionally. Don't look for me." That was it. No address, no phone number, no "I love you." Just a cold goodbye. Vanessa stared at it, her face unreadable. For a long while she sat on the couch, legs crossed, staring into space. Then, slowly, a smile curled across her lips. "Finally," she whispered to herself. She folded the note neatly and slid it into her handbag like a receipt from a shopping trip. That same evening, black SUVs rolled up the driveway. Men in sharp suits with bank logos clipped to their jackets entered the mansion like they owned the place. In truth, they did. Loan default. Assets seized. By nightfall, the mansion that once screamed wealth was an empty shell. Cars, art, furniture, gone in hours. The housekeepers dismissed, the chef vanished, the gates locked. Vanessa dragged her boxy suitcase down the driveway, muttering curses under her breath. The wheels rattled against the stones, her red heels clicking like a cruel soundtrack. After all my years of patience, see me now, moving back to that cramped rat hole I once called home. Leonard, may suffering follow you everywhere. Amen. She didn't cry, she didn't call, she was just relieved to be free. Weeks rolled by, the headlines changed. People forgot. The Okafor name, once untouchable, now floated quietly in the shadows. Vanessa slipped back into her old apartment like she'd never left. Social life? Oh, she dusted that off and wore it proudly. To anyone who asked, she shrugged and sighed dramatically. Leonard? Poor man couldn't handle the pressure. He became emotionally unstable. I had to let him go. She said it with such confidence that people believed her. In fact, she almost believed herself. One bright afternoon, she strutted down a busy street with her best friend, Mandy, a lifestyle influencer who had made a career out of being loud, dramatic, and forever glued to her phone. The pair headed into a supermarket, Vanessa in oversized sunglasses and a scarf that screamed old money, while Kemi laughed at her own Instagram likes. And then Vanessa saw him. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. Sitting by the supermarket entrance was a man in a rusty old wheelchair. His clothes were filthy, torn in places. His hair and beard were overgrown, his skin caked in dust. He looked like he hadn't seen a shower in months. People passed by like he didn't exist. But when he wheeled himself forward and lifted his head, Vanessa froze. The eyes. That face. That voice. Vanessa. His voice cracked, weak, broken. He pulled a single fake plastic flower from a bag on his lap. Please. Her stomach twisted, her jaw dropped. Leonard? She whispered. He nodded, looking up at her with eyes that carried quiet pain. I know I have nothing, he said, his voice trembling, but I still love you. Will you marry me? He stretched out the plastic flower with a trembling hand. The crowd slowed, heads turned, phones came out. Vanessa stepped back, disgust twisting her face. What? She spat. What nonsense is this? What are you doing here? I thought you said you'd stand by me, Leonard whispered, his voice cracking. You promised. Before Vanessa could respond, Mandy stormed forward like a bodyguard fueled by gossip. She folded her arms and scoffed loudly. How dare this trash even speak to us? This is harassment, pure embarrassment. The small crowd around them chuckled. Some laughed. Others filmed. Leonard kept his eyes on Vanessa, still holding out the flower like a fool in love. I just wanted to remind you, he said softly, that I loved you. I thought you'd still see me. Vanessa's lips curled in fury. With one sharp motion, she slapped the flower out of his hand. Plastic hit the ground and bounced into the dust. Then, without hesitation, she slapped his cheek so hard his head snapped sideways. Gasps erupted. Someone whistled. How dare you? She screamed, her voice slicing through the air. You're not even standing on your own 2 feet. You dare to embarrass me in public? You stink. Look at you. Filthy, broken, begging. Leonard lowered his head. He didn't defend himself. You disgust me, she hissed, stepping back. If you ever come near me again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. The crowd murmured louder now. Phones recorded. Some laughed cruelly. Others whispered, shaking their heads. Leonard tried to speak, his lips trembling. But Vanessa wasn't done. Whatever we had is dead, she snapped. Do you hear me? Over. I already have a man who isn't rotting in a wheelchair, pretending to be somebody. A man better than you ever were. Mandy cackled beside her, waving her phone like she was about to live stream the whole humiliation. Honestly, Vanessa, she sneered, look at him. Pitiful. Trash will always be trash. The crowd buzzed with half-shocked, half-amused energy. That was when the supermarket doors swung open. A young woman in a neat staff uniform stepped out, fury in her eyes. She was small, almost delicate, but her steps were firm, her voice cutting. Hey, she shouted, marching straight towards Vanessa and Mandy. What do you think you're doing? The crowd hushed slightly, curious. You've humiliated a man who only showed you love, the woman continued, standing protectively in front of Leonard's wheelchair. Even if you don't want him, you didn't have to treat him like garbage. Vanessa rolled her eyes so hard it was a miracle they didn't fall out. Excuse me? You heard me, the young woman snapped. He may not have money, he may be in a wheelchair, but he's still a human being, something you clearly forgot. Mandy scoffed. And who exactly are you? His savior? The woman's chin lifted proudly. No, I'm just someone who still has a heart, which is more than I can say for either of you. Then she turned to Leonard, her eyes softening instantly. She crouched slightly, lowering herself to his level. I'm sorry, she said gently. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Her voice carried no performance, no audience, no hashtags, just kindness. Please don't let their cruelty make you forget who you are, she added softly. It's not what you own that defines you. It's who you are inside. Leonard's throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, he felt something real. And as the crowd watched in silence, it was clear. One woman's cruelty had exposed a rotten heart, but another woman's kindness had awakened something Leonard thought he had lost forever. And for one brief, reckless moment, he wanted to stand up from that rusty wheelchair, rip off the disguise and shout, Surprise! Joke's on you, Vanessa. I'm still Leonard Okafor, billionaire, private jet owner, Lagos's golden boy. And you? You just flunked the loyalty test of the decade. But no, something inside him said, not yet. He wasn't done watching. He wasn't done seeing who was real and who was fake when the spotlight wasn't shining. And right there in the middle of that supermarket chaos, one person had stood up for him. Not Vanessa, not Mandy, not Janet, not any of the so-called friends who used to orbit around him like flies chasing sugar. No, it was a total stranger, a petite young woman with fire in her eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. Thank you, Leonard croaked. His voice sounded like sandpaper. She smiled gently. I'm Tessie. I work inside the supermarket. Would you like some water? Leonard blinked. Water. That simple? He had bought million-dollar wines, aged whiskeys, champagne flown in from France. Women used to beg for pictures with his imported bottles, and now one woman offered him plain water as if it was the best gift in the world. "Yes," he whispered. "Thank you, Tessie." Behind them, Vanessa burst into another round of cruel laughter that could cut glass. "Oh, please, Tessie, is this Nollywood? Charity drama? I beg, let's go." Mandy, ever the backup singer in Vanessa's choir of wickedness, looped her arm through Vanessa's. "Imagine, oh, almost marrying this trash. Thank God you dodged that bullet." Their heels clacked away, leaving behind perfume, arrogance, and the sour echo of mockery. Leonard didn't even look after them. For the first time in weeks, his eyes stayed on Tessie. She saw him. Not the billionaire, not the cripple, just him. When Vanessa's laughter finally faded down the street, Leonard exhaled deeply. It was over. Finished. Done. No more excuses. No more convincing himself that Vanessa was just joking, just stressed, just misunderstood. The mask had fallen. The real Vanessa had shown her face, and it was uglier than he could have ever imagined. "Are you okay?" Tessie's voice cut softly into his storm. Leonard turned his tired eyes toward her. Even with the dirt streaks on his face, the smell of unwashed clothes clinging to him, she didn't flinch. She looked straight at him, like he was human, like he mattered. "I'll be fine," Leonard muttered. Hollow words, but it was all he had. Tessie frowned slightly, then glanced around at the staring crowd. "Do you have anywhere to stay?" Silence. "Nowhere," Leonard said finally, and it was true in more ways than one. His mansion had been seized, but even if it hadn't, in that moment he had never felt more homeless. Tessie nodded, stood up, and said 3 words that knocked the air out of him. "Come with me." Leonard blinked. "Where?" "My house," she replied simply. "You can't sleep on the street." He almost laughed. Him? Leonard Okafor, who used to debate whether to spend weekends in Monaco or Dubai, now being dragged into some stranger's house in Sur-Alaire? Life had jokes. But she wasn't joking. Within minutes, she had gone back inside the supermarket, told her supervisor she was leaving early, grabbed a small bag of groceries, and returned with bottled water. She placed it in his hands like it was treasure. And then she pushed his rusty wheelchair down the uneven, noisy streets of Lagos. People stared. Some whispered. But she didn't care. After a long, bumpy ride, they reached a compound with rusty gates and walls that had seen better days. She led him inside a tiny one-room apartment. The paint was peeling, the ceiling fan squeaked like it was begging for retirement, but it was spotless and smelled faintly of freshly cooked beans. "Mom," Tessie called. "I brought someone. He needed help." From a corner of the room, a woman with tired eyes but a kind smile appeared, wrapper tied around her waist. Tessie explained quickly, and her mother's face softened. "You can stay," the older woman said without hesitation. "We don't have much, but we can't watch someone suffer outside." And just like that, Leonard Okafor, the man who once paid chefs to fly in lobsters overnight, was given an old mattress on the floor, a clean wrapper, a second-hand t-shirt, and a plate of rice and stew from one pot. Tessie even gave him the bigger portion without blinking. That night, as he watched Tessie laugh with her mother while washing plates, Leonard realized something. He had lived in mansions so big they echoed. He had thrown parties where champagne fountains flowed non-stop. He had dined with governors, billionaires, and celebrities. But in that tiny room, under a flickering bulb and a cracked window, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Days rolled into weeks. Leonard kept his mouth shut about who he really was. He said little, only "thank you," "good morning," and "I'm fine." He spent most of his time by the window, watching children run, traders haggle, buses honk, and life carry on without him. But the thing he watched most was Tessie. She didn't have much. Her supermarket salary barely paid rent and bought food. Yet she found joy in the smallest things. She'd sing while cooking, joke with neighbors, and laugh with her mother about nothing at all. And she gave. Oh, she gave. One afternoon, instead of eating her small lunch of Gary and groundnuts, Leonard saw her hand it to 2 hungry children under a mango tree. Their smiles lit up the whole street. Another evening, he overheard her whispering to a pharmacist, begging for her mother's blood pressure medicine on credit. She never complained. She never blamed life. She simply smiled and kept going. Leonard felt something inside him shift. This was the kind of woman he had been searching for his whole life. Not polished, not plastic, not fake, just real. Every evening, no matter how tired she was, Tessie came home and asked him, "Do you need anything?" She warmed his bathwater, served him food with both hands, and ended the day with a tired but genuine smile. One night, as rain tapped on the tin roof, Tessie sat beside him, drying her wet feet with a ragged towel. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Leonard swallowed hard. "I am. Thank you. For everything." She smiled. "You're welcome. Everyone deserves a little kindness." She didn't know it, but those words stabbed him in the heart. He had once believed money bought everything. That love was loyalty wrapped in diamond rings and designer gowns. But now, in a tiny one-room apartment with a woman who had nothing but heart, he realized something. For the first time in his life, Leonard Okafor, billionaire, was rich in the one thing money could never buy: love. Leonard Okafor sat in Tessie's small sitting room, staring at the old calendar on the wall as if it held the answers to life. He looked at her, his eyes curious, almost boyish. "And you?" he asked, leaning back in the wooden chair that squeaked like it was protesting his weight. "What's your story?" Tessie chuckled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "My story?" she repeated, her voice soft, almost too steady. She let out a long sigh before speaking. "I wanted to be a nurse," she said, her eyes drifting to the window as though she could see her younger self in a white uniform. "I even got admission. My father had started saving for my school fees. Then, just like that, he died before I could finish year one. Everything scattered like Gary in water. I had to drop out, find a job, and take care of Mama. That's life for you." Leonard's throat tightened. The billionaire inside him wanted to argue, to say money fixes everything. But the broken man he was pretending to be knew better. "That must have been hard," he whispered. Tessie shrugged, wiping her palms on her faded skirt. "It was hard, but guess what? I'm still here, still breathing. Some people didn't even make it this far. So who am I to complain?" For a moment, silence filled the room. Not the awkward silence, but the kind that weighed heavy on the chest. Tessie turned her head slightly and added, "Listen, Leonard, what you lost doesn't define you. What matters is what you do now." Her words hit him like a slap, but not the painful kind. The kind that wakes you up. If only she knew. If only Tessie had the slightest idea that the scruffy, limping man sitting in her living room, the one she gave food, defended at the supermarket, and spoke to like a human being, was once Leonard Okafor, the billionaire every magazine drooled over. The man whose face used to trend on Forbes cover pages. But she didn't know. She wasn't talking to a billionaire. She was talking to him. Just a man. Leonard turned his head slowly, stealing another glance at her. And suddenly, his chest felt heavy. Not with sorrow. He had carried that weight long enough. This was different. This was warm. It was dangerous. Love. Not the kind Vanessa had pretended to give him, gift-wrapped with flashy clothes and Instagram filters. No. This was real. Quiet. Gentle. Steady. It didn't come from admiration or envy. It came from understanding. And that scared him to his core. Because while Leonard was sure of how he felt, he wasn't sure about Tessie. Did she really like him? Or was it just pity for a crippled beggar that made her kind? He looked down at his hands, scarred and dirty, and a bitter thought crossed his mind. He had shown Vanessa his whole world once, his wealth, his empire, his heart, but she never gave him what Tessie gave with just her words. And yet, if he told Tessie the truth, would he lose her too? So, he kept quiet, swallowing the lump in his throat, and just listened to the sound of her breathing beside him. Meanwhile, far away in the shiny side of town, Vanessa's world was falling apart faster than chin-chin in hot oil. She sat on the edge of Tunde's designer couch, scrolling through her phone, her hands trembling. And there it was, the video. Grainy footage, but clear enough. Security camera from the supermarket. She was right there in full HD, her voice echoing like a Nollywood villain. "Get your filthy hands off me! You stink! You think I would ever marry a crippled beggar?" Oh, she said it loud. And now the whole world had heard it. No one edited it. No filters. No cutting and pasting. Just the raw truth, leaked by some supermarket worker who clearly had time for justice. Within an hour, the video spread like wildfire. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp groups, gossip blogs, you name it. Comments rained down like acid. "Wicked witch. Imagine treating a disabled man like that. And she used to post love quotes, oh. Fraudster heart." In less than 24 hours, hashtags were trending. Cancel Vanessa plastic heart disability is not disgrace. Her social media followers, once her crown jewel, began to vanish like ice cubes in Harmattan's sun. We do not support cruelty or ableism. We have cut all ties with Vanessa. Vanessa's jaw nearly fell off. She tried damage control. She went live with swollen eyes and fake tears. I was set up, she cried into the camera. You people don't know the full story. I've been through so much. A few gullible fans bought it. Most didn't. Even Mandy, her influencer bestie, eventually jumped ship. She posted a video with a dramatic sigh. I was just there. I didn't support Vanessa's actions. Vanessa screamed at her phone. Betrayal. But at least she still had one person left. Tunde, her new lover. The same Tunde she had run to when Leonard lost everything. She was now living in his flashy apartment and posting fake happy couple pictures in his t-shirts while her career burned outside. At night, though, when Tunde was asleep, Vanessa would scroll through hate comments, biting her nails. It'll pass, she muttered to herself. People forget fast. Another celebrity will mess up, then I'll be free. And with that, she locked her phone and buried herself under the duvet. She didn't regret what she did. She only regretted getting caught. Back at Tessie's home, Leonard sat by the tiny window, watching her and her mother fold laundry and laugh softly. He had been quiet for days, not because he was confused, but because he knew exactly what he had to do next. That evening, when Tessie left for her night shift and her mother dozed off, Leonard reached into his old backpack. He pulled out the only thing he had kept from his former life, a small, dusty phone. With trembling hands, he powered it on and dialed a number he knew by heart. The line clicked. Leonard? A woman's voice gasped, his mother. It's me, Mom, he said softly. I'm fine. And then he told her everything. The plan, the disguise, the heartbreak, the betrayal, and finally, Tessie. His mother stayed silent for a long moment. Then her voice came, trembling with both fear and pride. Leonard Okafor, you've gone too far this time, but I understand. And I'm proud of you, my son. For once, you look deeper. Boom. A few days later, an elderly woman in a plain Ankara gown walked into the small supermarket where Tessie worked. No bodyguards, no convoy, no noise. She simply blended in like any other ordinary customer. Nobody knew she was Mrs. Okafor, Leonard's mother. She picked up a small bag of rice and a bottle of cooking oil, and when she got to the counter, Tessie greeted her with her usual bright smile. Good afternoon, Ma. Did you find everything you need? Yes, dear. The woman replied warmly, patting her wrapper. Suddenly, her face changed. She dug into her pockets, frowned, and let out a dramatic sigh. Oh dear, I forgot my wallet at home. The line behind her shifted with irritation. A man in the queue hissed, Madam, I beg, no waste our time. Another cashier from the next counter rolled her eyes and muttered loudly, If you don't have money, shift abeg. Tessie didn't even flinch. She simply reached into her pocket, pulled out her small earnings, and smiled. Don't worry, Ma. I'll pay for it. But the all cash I have on me won't take care of all of these. The woman's eyes widened. You don't even know me. Tessie shrugged. That doesn't matter. All I see is a woman who needs help. That's enough. She packed the items gently and pushed them forward. God bless you, my child, the woman said with surprising warmth. Tessie smiled. Amen, Ma. She had no idea the woman standing before her was Leonard's mother, testing her heart. That evening, Tessie returned home. Her mother looked at her closely, smiling in a strange way. There's something different about you today, she said, laying a hand on Tessie's shoulder. Tessie chuckled. Maybe it's peace. She didn't know what was coming. The next morning, a knock rattled their rusted gate. When Tessie opened it, she froze. Large bags of rice, cartons of vegetable oil, packs of toiletries, tubers of yam stacked high, even tissue paper in bundles. No note, no name, no explanation. Her mother gasped, whispering, Maybe God sent an angel. 2 days later, a call came from the local pharmacy. Her mother's long overdue medical bills had been cleared, every kobo paid. Tessie broke down in tears right there. She didn't know who was behind all this kindness, but in her heart she whispered, Thank you, Lord. From the corner of the room, Leonard watched silently, his heart melting. He said nothing, but one truth had already settled in his spirit. This woman's heart was pure, and he was falling in love with her more and more every day. 2 days later, Tessie returned home after a long shift. The sun was setting, and she looked tired, shoulders heavy, yet her face still wore that same gentle glow Leonard adored. At the door, she noticed something strange. A small bundle of envelopes was tucked between the gate and the wooden door. She picked them up with curiosity. The first one made her hands tremble. It was from the Nursing and Health Sciences Institute, the very school she once dreamed of attending. She tore it open, her eyes widening. She had been accepted. Tuition? Paid in full. The second envelope contained receipts from a private pharmacy, more proof that her mother's prescriptions had already been settled. Tessie stood still for a long moment, then slowly sat on the edge of the bed and broke into tears. Her mother rushed in, alarmed, but when she saw the letters in her daughter's hands, she understood immediately. Tessie wasn't crying from sorrow. She was crying because someone had given her hope again. That night, over dinner, Leonard kept sneaking glances at her. She was quieter than usual, staring at the letters as if afraid they'd disappear. "You okay?" Leonard asked softly. She smiled faintly. "Yes, I just think a secret angel is watching over us," Leonard chuckled. "Maybe it's one rich man who saw you and fell in love from afar. Would you run off and marry him if he showed up tomorrow?" For the first time in days, Tessie laughed. Genuine laughter, warm and light. "No," Leonard raised a brow. "Why not? Because I already have someone in my heart," she replied firmly. Leonard's chest tightened. "You do?" She nodded, her eyes soft, sincere. He swallowed hard, still hiding behind his disguise. "Even if that someone is crippled, with nothing to offer you?" Tessie didn't blink. Her voice was steady, her tone unshakable. "Love isn't about what someone can give or not give. Real love isn't measured by riches or looks. It's about how you see each other when everything else is gone." For the first time since his downfall, Leonard allowed himself to drop his guard. His voice was almost a whisper. "I love you too, Tessie. I've loved you for a long time now." Her eyes widened in surprise, but then softened into a shimmering smile. In that tiny room with cracked walls and a flickering bulb, they sat side by side. No more words, because sometimes silence is louder than speeches. But while love bloomed in that quiet corner of town, trouble was brewing elsewhere. Vanessa had been hiding like a rat since her scandal exploded online. For weeks, she stayed low, hoping people would move on. But the internet had teeth, and scars don't heal that fast. One afternoon, while scrolling through her messages, a DM caught her eye. "That beggar you disgraced? He's not homeless anymore. Word is, he's staying with a supermarket girl in Surulere." Her fingers froze. Her pupils dilated. Leonard. The same Leonard she mocked, dumped, and humiliated. Now living with a mere supermarket girl? That same Oversaba salesgirl who defended him that day? Vanessa saw red. The next morning, she stormed into the supermarket in full battle gear, flawless makeup, polished nails, high heels stabbing the tiles like daggers. Customers and staff froze as she marched in, eyes blazing. "So, this is where you hide?" Her voice thundered. Tessie stood up from where she was arranging items on the lower shelf. She blinked, startled. "Excuse me? You think you're smart, Abby?" Vanessa spat, storming closer. "You think you can steal a useless man and use him to destroy my name?" "Ma, I don't understand what you're saying." "Oh, please. Don't play innocent with me. You're the reason that video leaked. You work here. You and your coconut head probably sold the footage just to embarrass me." Tessie's brows knitted together. Her voice was calm but firm. "I had nothing to do with that video. I don't even know who leaked it." Vanessa scoffed and laughed bitterly. "Keep him then. Keep Leonard. I had him when he was worth something. Now he's crippled, broke, finished. Enjoy what's left." The supermarket fell into dead silence. Shoppers and staff stared, some recording on their phones. Tessie, however, stood her ground. "Money doesn't define a person," she said evenly. "You don't throw someone away just because life knocks them down." Vanessa's laughter dripped with venom. "That's cute. Really. Poverty mentality at its peak." With that, she turned dramatically, her heels clacking furiously as she stormed out of the store. That night, Tessie sat on the edge of her bed, replaying the humiliation in her mind. She sighed heavily, trying to push the bitterness away. From the corner of the room, Leonard rolled forward in his wheelchair, watching her closely. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She forced a smile. "I'm fine. Nothing to worry about." But Leonard saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried for sins she never committed. And in that moment, he knew. He couldn't hide anymore. It was time. The truth had to come out, and it would change everything. The sun that afternoon was shining as if it had a personal assignment. Too bright, too cheerful, almost mocking the storm that was about to hit. To the world, it was just another day. But for Leonard Okafor, the billionaire everyone thought had disappeared into thin air, this was the day his double life would end. He sat quietly outside a supermarket, looking every inch the part of a poor, broken man. His disguise had been perfected over weeks. The battered wheelchair, the faded shirt that still smelled like yesterday's dust, the rough blanket across his lap. To anyone passing by, he was just another forgotten soul. But hidden in his hand was a small velvet box that could flip the whole city upside down. When Tessie, the humble supermarket salesgirl, stepped out for her lunch break, she froze. "Leonard?" she asked, blinking in surprise. He gave her a soft smile, the kind that disarmed her every time. "Can we talk for a moment?" Curiosity in her eyes, Tessie nodded and wiped her hands on her apron. He wheeled himself slowly toward the quiet alley beside the supermarket, the very same spot where she once defended him when others mocked his condition. That day, she had fed him, sheltered him, and unknowingly stitched back pieces of his shattered heart. But today was different. He stopped, faced her fully, and took a shaky breath. "Tessie," he began, voice heavy with emotion, "you changed my life. You proved to me that kindness still exists, that not every woman is after fame or money. You made me believe in love again." A few onlookers had already stopped, whispering, trying to recognize the crippled beggar in the wheelchair. Phones came out, heads tilted. Then Leonard did what nobody expected. He pulled a small ring box from his pocket and opened it. A diamond glittered like it had been waiting for this very moment. Tessie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Tessie," Leonard said louder this time, his voice echoing against the walls. "Will you marry me? Not because I am anybody important, but because you saw a man who had nothing and gave him everything. You gave me dignity when I was just a shadow." The crowd held its breath. Tears filled Tessie's eyes as she nodded, whispering, "Yes, yes, Leonard, I will." The small crowd clapped, some cheering, others wiping their own eyes. But they were not ready for the earthquake about to follow. Leonard closed the ring box, took a slow breath, and then he stood up. Yes. The man who had supposedly been crippled for months, the man they had all pitied, rose tall and strong. Gasps shot through the crowd like gunfire. Tessie staggered back, shaking her head. "Leonard, your legs." With steady hands, he pulled away the fake bandages. The scruffy beard came off next. The ragged blanket dropped, and in seconds, the beggar was gone. Standing before them was Leonard Okafor, the billionaire plastered on magazine covers, the man society thought had vanished when his empire hit a storm. The crowd erupted, some in shock, some screaming, some recording like their lives depended on it. "I was never crippled," Leonard said calmly, raising his voice above the noise. "What I lost was trust. I needed to know if love could survive without wealth. And then I met Tessie." He turned back to her, his eyes soft. "This woman gave me food when I was hungry, shelter when I was cold, and peace when I was empty. Without even knowing who I was, she gave me something money could not buy, hope." The crowd melted. Some shouted, "This is real love." Others clapped like their rent depended on it. Leonard dropped to one knee, ring box open again. "Tessie, will you marry me? Not as the crippled beggar, not as the billionaire Leonard Okafor, but as the man who is hopelessly in love with you?" Tessie's legs gave way and she sank to her knees with him, sobbing. "Yes, Leonard, 1,000 times, yes!" Cheers exploded. Phones clicked. Videos streamed live. That very second, social media began to boil. Later that evening, Leonard gently helped Tessie into a sleek black SUV. The girl who used to walk home carrying bread in a nylon bag now sat wide-eyed, still processing that the crippled stranger was actually Nigeria's most eligible bachelor. The car rolled down a long private driveway. At the end, like something out of a movie, stood a mansion with pillars taller than Tessie's dreams. Her mouth fell open. Leonard chuckled. "Welcome home." He led her inside. Waiting at the staircase, dressed in pearls and grace, stood Mrs. Okafor, Leonard's mother. Tessie froze, suddenly shy. Before she could stammer a greeting, Mrs. Okafor stepped forward and took her hands warmly. "I know you," she said with a smile. "The day you paid for a stranger's groceries at the supermarket, that stranger was me." Tessie's eyes widened. "That was you?" Mrs. Okafor nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, my dear, and you didn't just help me. You helped my son. You gave him something I thought he had lost forever, faith in humanity." From her pocket, she brought out a small velvet case. Inside lay a diamond bracelet, classic and timeless. She gently clasped it around Tessie's wrist. "This belonged to my mother, and now it belongs to you, because your kindness did what billions couldn't. You healed my son." Tessie broke down, tears streaming uncontrollably. By nightfall, the internet had caught fire. Headlines read, "The beggar was a billionaire, and he found true love in a supermarket girl." Videos of the proposal spread like wildfire. Bloggers were losing sleep. TV stations interrupted programs. Leonard Okafor was back, but not with a celebrity or socialite. With Tessie, a supermarket worker from Sur-Alaire. Across town, while the world was celebrating, someone else was drowning in disbelief. Vanessa, Leonard's ex-fiancée, sat scrolling through her phone, her jaw tightening with each photo. There was Leonard, standing tall, handsome, alive, with Tessie beaming in front of the mansion. The caption mocked her soul. She loved him when he was nothing. Now she has everything. Vanessa's phone nearly slipped from her hand. Her chest tightened. Her lips trembled. She staggered back onto the couch, clutching her bag like it could save her. And then the cruelest twist hit her memory. She was pregnant. The test stick was still in her handbag, wrapped in tissue, mocking her existence. She had taken it that morning, thinking her fatigue was stress. But no, her life was about to get messier. Still shaking, she rushed home to tell her boyfriend Tunde. But when she reached the apartment, the place was silent. Too silent. The lock was stiff. She forced the door, only to find the house stripped, empty, gone. Confused, she ran to the mailbox. Inside was a crumpled note written in Tunde's scrawled handwriting. "Don't bother looking for me. I never loved you. You were just convenient and rich. By the way, I took everything in the house. Call the police if you want. But remember, I have the videos and the nudes." Vanessa's world spun. Leonard was gone. Tessie had taken her place. Tunde had robbed her blind, and she was pregnant, alone, betrayed, and drowning. Life had just served her a dish colder than ice. The next morning, the sun was busy shining as if Lagos had finally paid its NEPA bill. Streets were alive, buses honked like they were in a choir rehearsal, and life went on as normal, except for one person whose world had just collapsed. That person was Vanessa. Her knees hit the floor as she read and reread the note Tunde left her. "Don't bother looking for me. I never loved you. You were just convenient. Also, I carried everything in the house. Call the police if you like, but remember, I have the videos." Videos. That one word was enough to squeeze her throat. She tried calling Mandy, her so-called best friend. No answer. She tried 3 other friends. Nobody picked. Suddenly, all those ride-or-die sisters had evaporated like sachet water in the sun. Alone, desperate, Vanessa opened her Instagram app, the same app she used to oppress people, post designer bags, and type "never settle for less" under every selfie. Now, her followers were dropping like flies sprayed with BEGGAR. Every second, hundreds unfollowed. Brand deals she once bragged about, gone. The remaining ones put out official statements. "We don't support this type of behavior. We believe in inclusivity and respect." Translation? "You're finished, madam." Her comment section was now a market square of insults. People reposted the viral clip, Vanessa slapping a man she thought was a poor beggar, only for him to later reveal he was Leonard Okafor, the billionaire. Her name was mud. Her brand was gone. And now, pregnant, broke, alone, forgotten. She curled up by her locked apartment door, hugging her knees, shaking uncontrollably. For the first time, she admitted the bitter truth. She had traded a crown for crumbs. Meanwhile, in a different world entirely, the rooftop of the Okafor mansion was glowing under the stars. Lanterns hung from the railings, soft wind chimes sang in the night, and a small table for 2 was set with quiet elegance. It wasn't one of those over-the-top billionaire dinners, just peaceful, personal, the kind of moment that mattered. Leonard pulled out a chair for Tessie, the simple supermarket girl who had unknowingly stolen his heart. She sat down nervously, still trying to process her new life. Leonard exhaled deeply. His voice was softer than usual. "Tessie, there's something you deserve to know." She tilted her head, her eyes calm but attentive. "This was never about pity. I wasn't some helpless man you rescued. I was testing someone, Vanessa, my ex-fiancée." And then he laid it all bare. The fake bankruptcy. The staged accident. The wheelchair. How Vanessa had mocked him, crushed his hope, and proved love in his world was all about status. "I needed to know if love without money could exist," Leonard admitted. "And then, I met you." Tessie blinked slowly, then smiled. I'm glad you found your answer, she said softly. But I'm even more glad you found yourself in the process. They talked deep into the night about loss, kindness, and the strange ways life humbles the proud while lifting the humble. Tessie admitted, I never expected anything from you. I just couldn't stand watching someone being treated unfairly. Leonard reached across the table and held her hand. You gave me more than money ever could, Tessie. You gave me back, me. Just as peace was settling in, the sound of hurried heels echoed through the mansion halls. Vanessa, she stormed in like a hurricane, mascara running, eyes red, clutching her phone as if it could reverse time. The guards had tried to stop her, but she pushed past like a madwoman on a mission. Leonard, she screamed, please, let me explain. Leonard and Tessie turned slowly, their calmness a sharp contrast to her chaos. I didn't know it was you, Vanessa cried. That day at the supermarket, I thought you were just some common beggar. I was only joking. You know how I play. Leonard's face didn't move an inch. His silence was louder than her words. You weren't joking, he said finally. His tone was sharp, cutting through her like glass. You were cruel, proud, loud, and every word you meant it. Her phone slipped from her hands. But I was with you first, she pleaded. She just appeared from nowhere. What if she's the gold digger? I've always known you, Leonard. He raised a hand, silencing her, his eyes locked onto hers with chilling precision. Answer me this. If I was still in that wheelchair, would you be standing here right now? Vanessa froze. Her throat dried up. Words failed. You're not here because you're sorry, Leonard continued. You're here because your world is collapsing and you think I can glue it back together. But that chapter of my life is closed. He turned slightly and gestured toward the door. Leave. The silence was deafening. Heels clapped against marble as Vanessa walked out, each step sounding like failure itself. She didn't dare look back. The rooftop grew calm again. Tessie walked over and slipped her hand into Leonard's. That door needed to close, she whispered. And a better one has opened, he replied, staring into her eyes. Weeks later, the world was invited to witness history. The Okafor mansion garden bloomed with white roses swaying gently in the golden afternoon sun. Guests arrived in glamorous outfits, whispers of excitement buzzing in the air. But this wasn't just another billionaire wedding with cameras flashing and socialites pretending to smile. No, this was different. This was a wedding of redemption, humility, and true love. Leonard stood at the altar in a crisp suit, not smiling at the cameras or the powerful men in attendance, but at Tessie, the girl walking down the aisle in a gown that sparkled like morning dew. The ceremony was simple but heavenly. No PR stunts, no fake Instagram filters, just two souls standing together, choosing truth over appearances. When they exchanged vows, the world seemed to pause. I was drowning in emptiness, Leonard whispered, until you pulled me out and gave me life again. Tessie's voice shook as she replied, I didn't love you for what you had. I loved you for how you made me feel safe, seen, and whole. Applause filled the air. Even the flowers seemed to lean in approval. Later, under fairy lights at the reception, Mrs. Okafor raised her glass. My son was never truly rich until he met Tessie. She had nothing but gave him everything. That is the wealth money cannot buy. Tessie cried silently. Leonard kissed her hand, pride in his eyes. Across town, reality had a different flavor. In a dingy, empty apartment with peeling paint and flickering bulbs, Vanessa sat hunched over her cracked phone. The wedding was everywhere. Photos of Leonard kissing Tessie's forehead, headlines screaming about the billionaire who found true love in a salesgirl. Her stomach twisted. She dropped the phone. The silence of the apartment wrapped around her like a coffin. No friends, no fiancé, no money, just loneliness and regret. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the center of attention. She was invisible. Back at the mansion, Leonard held Tessie close under the lantern-lit garden. In losing everything, he whispered, I found you. And in finding you, I found myself. Tessie pressed her forehead against his, smiling through tears. And that night, the story was sealed forever. True love isn't in wealth or beauty, but in the hand that holds yours when the whole world turns its back. Moral of the story, money buys luxury, but kindness buys forever.